Have you ever sent a text to the wrong person and felt your heart drop? What if that message was "I love you" and the recipient was your boss? Today's story will take you on an emotional journey that might just change how you see workplace relationships forever. If this resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more heartwarming stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Darius Thompson stared at his phone in horror, the blood draining from his face. His trembling thumb hovered over the screen as the reality of what he had just done sank in. The text message glared back at him, already delivered with that mocking little read receipt beneath it. "I love you. Sleep tight, princess." The message intended for his 7-year-old daughter Amara had instead been sent to Monique Sterling, his direct supervisor, and the notoriously stern CEO of Pinnacle Creative Agency. "No, no, no," Darius whispered, frantically typing a follow-up explanation. But before he could hit send, his phone chimed with a response. "Darius, I think you may have sent this to the wrong person." He groaned, burying his face in his hands. Tomorrow's board meeting was going to be unbearably awkward. At 36, as a single father struggling to balance his career with raising Amara after his wife's death, 3 years ago, this was the last complication he needed. Darius lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in the suburbs of Philadelphia. The walls were adorned with Amara's artwork and photos of happier times when Jasmine was still with them. His life had become a carefully orchestrated routine of school drop-offs, client meetings, dinner preparations, and bedtime stories. There was no room for error, no space for embarrassing mishaps like this one. After sending a profuse apology to Monique, Darius checked on Amara, who was already fast asleep. Her dark curly hair, so like her mother's, spread across the pillow in a beautiful halo. He kissed her forehead gently, before retreating to his own room, where sleep evaded him as he imagined the professional fallout awaiting him. The next morning was a blur of rushed breakfast, Amara's forgotten homework, and a spilled coffee that left a stubborn stain on his only clean dress shirt. By the time he dropped Amara off at school and arrived at the office, Darius was already exhausted. "Daddy, are you okay?" Amara had asked at breakfast, her perceptive brown eyes studying his face. "You look worried." "Just a busy day ahead, princess," he had replied, forcing a smile. "Nothing for you to worry about." Now, as the elevator climbed to the 14th floor where the executive offices were located, Darius rehearsed what he would say to Monique. They had always maintained a strictly professional relationship. Monique was respected but feared throughout the company. Brilliant, demanding, and intensely private. At 42, she had built Pinnacle from a small startup to a major player in digital marketing, with a reputation for perfectionism that had earned her the nickname the Ice Queen among some staff members. The elevator doors opened and Darius stepped into the corridor, his heart pounding. He had 20 minutes before the board meeting. Perhaps he could catch Monique beforehand and clear the air. Her office door was closed, her assistant's desk empty. Darius hesitated, then knocked softly. "Come in," came Monique's crisp voice. She was standing by the window, silhouetted against the Philadelphia skyline, her tailored navy suit and elegant locks projecting the polished image she was known for. When she turned, Darius was surprised to see not the cold disapproval he expected, but something softer in her expression. "Darius," she said, gesturing to a chair. "Please sit down." "Miss Sterling, about last night's text," he began. "Monique," she corrected him. "And yes, I gathered it wasn't meant for me. It was for my daughter." Darius explained, the words tumbling out. "It's our nightly routine. I was distracted because I was reviewing the presentation for today while texting her goodnight, and somehow Darius." Monique interrupted gently. "It's fine." "Really?" There was an awkward pause as Darius shifted in his seat. "I appreciate your understanding," he said finally. "I promise it won't happen again." Monique studied him for a moment, then surprised him by asking, "How old is your daughter?" "Amara." "She's 7. And it's just the two of you?" Darius nodded. "My wife passed away 3 years ago. Cancer." Something flickered across Monique's face. Recognition, perhaps, or empathy. "I'm sorry," she said, and for once the corporate mask seemed to slip. That must be incredibly difficult. Before Darius could respond, Monique's assistant appeared at the door, reminding them that the board was assembling. The moment of connection vanished as quickly as it had appeared, and Monique was once again the focused CEO gathering her materials for the meeting. "We should go," she said, her professional demeanor firmly back in place. "And Darius, your presentation looks excellent. You have nothing to worry about." The board meeting went surprisingly well. Darius's proposal for a new digital campaign was approved unanimously, with Monique offering strong support. As the day progressed, he began to think that perhaps the texting incident would simply fade away, becoming nothing more than an embarrassing anecdote. But at 5 o'clock, as he was preparing to leave to pick up Amara from her after-school program, Monique appeared at his office door. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. Darius glanced at his watch. "I need to pick up my daughter by 5:30. Monique nodded. "This won't take long. I wanted to ask if you'd consider taking on the Morrison account. It's a significant opportunity, but it would involve some travel to their headquarters in Charlotte." Darius felt a mixture of pride and anxiety. The Morrison account was huge, a career-making opportunity, but travel was always complicated with Amara. "I'm honored," he said carefully. "But with Amara, travel is challenging. I don't have family nearby to help, and my regular sitter can't do overnight stays." Monique leaned against the doorframe, considering him. "What if we could work something out? The company could provide additional childcare support as part of the package. Morrison specifically requested you after seeing your work on the Patterson campaign." Darius was stunned. I'd need to think about the logistics." "Of course," Monique said. "Take the weekend. We can discuss details on Monday." She paused, then added, "And Darius. I understand the balancing act you're performing more than you might think." With that cryptic comment, she left, leaving Darius to wonder what she meant. That evening, as he helped Amara with her homework, his phone chimed with a text. It was from Monique, which was unusual enough to make him nervous. "I hope this isn't overstepping," the message read, "but I came across this service that provides emergency childcare for business travelers. Might be useful if you take on Morrison. No pressure either way." Attached was a link to a vetted childcare service that specialized in supporting single parents with demanding careers. Darius stared at the message, unsure how to interpret this unexpected gesture. "Daddy, you're doing that worried face again," Amara observed, looking up from her math worksheet. Darius smiled, tucking his phone away. "Just work stuff, sweetheart. Nothing important." But later, after Amara was asleep, he found himself researching the service Monique had recommended. It seemed legitimate and could solve one of his biggest challenges. Still, he couldn't help wondering why the famously aloof CEO was taking such an interest in his personal situation. Monday morning brought another surprise. As Darius settled at his desk, Monique's assistant delivered a coffee prepared exactly how he liked it, with a note. "Thought you might need this. Meeting at 11 to discuss Morrison." The meeting was productive and focused. Monique had clearly put thought into how to structure the project to accommodate Darius's parenting responsibilities. Most of the travel could be condensed into 2-day trips, with video conferences filling the gaps. "I think I can make this work," Darius said finally. "Thank you for being so understanding about my situation." Monique's expression softened slightly. "We're not just colleagues, Darius. We're people with lives outside these walls. The company benefits when we recognize that." Over the next few weeks, as Darius began work on the Morrison account, he noticed subtle changes in his interactions with Monique. Their conversations became less formal. She occasionally asked about Amara. Once, when he had to leave early for Amara's school play, Monique not only approved his absence without question, but also asked to see photos afterward. The first trip to Charlotte loomed, and despite the careful planning, Darius was anxious. 2 days away from Amara felt like an eternity, even with the reliable sitter from the service Monique had recommended. The night before his departure, as he tucked Amara into bed, she asked the question he had been dreading. "Why can't I come with you, Daddy?" Darius sat on the edge of her bed, smoothing her hair. "It's a work trip, Princess. I'll be in meetings all day. You'd be bored. But who will read me stories? And what if I have a bad dream?" Darius's heart clenched. "Ms. Williams will read to you, and if you have a bad dream, you can call me no matter what time it is. I promise I'll answer." Amara nodded solemnly, but her eyes were worried. Mama used to say that when you love someone, you're never really apart because they're always in your heart. Darius swallowed hard. Mama was very wise, and she was right. "I wish she was still here," Amara whispered. "Me too, sweetheart. Every day." Darius kissed her forehead, blinking back tears. "But we're doing okay, aren't we? You and me." Amara nodded, wrapping her small arms around his neck. "We're a good team." The next morning, dropping Amara off with the sitter was harder than Darius had anticipated. He arrived at the airport distracted and emotional, barely noticing his surroundings, until he heard a familiar voice. Darius. He turned to find Monique standing behind him in the security line, carry-on bag in hand. "Monique, are you going to Charlotte too?" She nodded. "I decided the initial client meeting would benefit from both of us being there. I hope that's okay." Of course, Darius said surprised but relieved. Having Monique there would actually make things easier. She knew the company's vision better than anyone. They ended up seated next to each other on the plane. And as they reached cruising altitude, Darius found himself sharing his concerns about leaving Amara. "This is the first time I've been away from her overnight since Jasmine died," he admitted. "I know it's irrational, but I keep thinking of all the things that could go wrong." Monique listened attentively. "It's not irrational at all. You're her father. Worrying comes with the territory." "Did your parents worry about you?" Darius asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. "I'm sorry, that's none of my business." But Monique didn't seem offended. "My father wasn't in the picture," she said quietly. "And my mother. She worked 3 jobs to support us. She worried constantly, but more about paying the bills than about me being okay emotionally. She did her best, though." This glimpse into Monique's background was unexpected. In 3 years at Pinnacle, Darius had never heard her mention her family. "Is that why you're so driven?" he asked. Monique considered the question. "Partly. I wanted security, yes, but also validation, I suppose. Proof that I was worth the sacrifices she made." The conversation shifted to the Morrison project, but something had changed between them. A wall had come down, revealing a more human connection. In Charlotte, they worked seamlessly together, impressing the Morrison executives with their presentation. That evening, over dinner at the hotel restaurant, the conversation flowed easily, touching on their respective journeys to Pinnacle favorite books and eventually circling back to family. "Do you ever think about having children?" Darius asked, then immediately backtracked. "I'm sorry, that's incredibly personal." Monique twirled her wine glass thoughtfully. "It's fine. And yes, I did think about it. For a while, my career was all-consuming, and then she paused. I was engaged once about 8 years ago. He wanted children. I was finally ready. And then he decided he wasn't ready for any of it. Marriage, family, commitment. "I'm sorry," Darius said sincerely. Monique shrugged, but he could see the lingering hurt. It worked out for the best. Pinnacle might not exist in its current form if I'd taken a different path. Still, it's okay to acknowledge the loss of what might have been, Darius said gently. Monique looked at him with surprise, as if she wasn't accustomed to such understanding. "Yes, I suppose it is." Later that night, Darius called Amara as promised. Monique, passing through the hotel lobby, overheard his side of the conversation. "Yes, Princess. I miss you too. No monsters under the hotel bed either. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Sweet dreams." When he hung up, he found Monique watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Everything okay at home?" she asked. Darius nodded. She's fine. Just wanted her goodnight call. You're a good father, Darius, Monique said softly. Amara is lucky to have you. Before he could respond, she wished him good night and headed for the elevator, leaving Darius to wonder about the wistfulness he had glimpsed in her eyes. The Charlotte trip was a success, securing the Morrison account and establishing what promised to be a lucrative ongoing relationship. On the flight home, Monique surprised Darius by showing him a draft of a new company policy on her tablet. What do you think she asked? It was a flexible work arrangement specifically designed for employees with caregiving responsibilities. Darius read through the document, impressed by its thoughtfulness. This is incredible. It would make a huge difference for so many people. Including you, Monique asked. Definitely. But what prompted this? Monique hesitated. Let's just say your misdirected text message made me realize we could be doing more to support our employees as whole people. Back in Philadelphia, Darius settled back into his routine with Amara, but found himself thinking about Monique often. Their professional relationship had evolved into something warmer with regular check-ins that sometimes strayed beyond work topics. Occasionally, she would send him articles about child development or activities in Philadelphia that might interest Amara. One evening, as Darius was preparing dinner, his phone rang with Monique's number. I'm sorry to bother you at home, she began, but there's been a development with Morrison. They want to move up the timeline for the second phase, which means another trip to Charlotte next week. I know it's short notice. Darius glanced at the calendar on the refrigerator. Actually, Amara has school vacation next week. I was planning to take a few days off. There was a pause on the line. I see. Well, we could try to reschedule, or perhaps I could handle this meeting alone. Darius found himself saying, or what if Amara came with me? I could extend the trip by a couple of days, make it a mini vacation for her after the business part is done. You'd want to do that? Monique sounded surprised. She's been asking to ride on an airplane and it would solve our problem. Darius hesitated, then added, unless you think it would be unprofessional. Not at all, Monique said quickly. In fact, it aligns perfectly with our new family-friendly policies. I'll have my assistant arrange for a larger hotel suite for you. After they hung up, Darius explained the plan to Amara, who was ecstatic about the upcoming adventure. Will I get to meet your boss? She asked, the one who helps you with your work problems. Darius was surprised that Amara had picked up on his mentions of Monique. Maybe. She'll be at the meetings too. Amara nodded seriously. I want to thank her for helping you. You smile more when you talk about work now. Children's perceptiveness never ceased to amaze him. The following Monday, Darius and Amara boarded the flight to Charlotte. Amara clutched her special travel backpack filled with activities Darius had prepared. They were seated in first class, an unexpected upgrade that Darius suspected was Monique's doing. Daddy, is that your boss? Amara whispered, suddenly pointing toward the front of the cabin. Sure enough, Monique was settling into a seat a few rows ahead. She hadn't mentioned being on the same flight. As if sensing their attention, she turned and spotted them, her face lighting up with a smile warmer than any Darius had seen from her before. She approached their row. Hello, Darius. And you must be Amara. I've heard so much about you. Amara, normally shy with strangers, beamed up at Monique. Are you the boss who helps my daddy? Monique glanced at Darius, amusement in her eyes. I try to help, yes. Though your daddy is very good at his job all on his own. He works really hard, Amara informed her solemnly. Sometimes too hard. Mama used to say he needed to remember to play more. A flicker of something compassion perhaps crossed Monique's face. Your mama sounds very wise, she said softly. Playing is important for everyone, even grown-ups. The flight passed quickly, with Monique occasionally stopping by their row to check if Amara needed anything. By the time they landed in Charlotte, Amara had decided that Monique was not scary at all, even if she is the boss. The business portion of the trip went smoothly. Darius had arranged for Amara to spend the meeting days with a highly recommended childcare service that organized educational outings around the city. Each evening, he would return to find her bubbling with stories about science exhibits at Discovery Place or the beautiful gardens at Daniel Stowe Botanical Garden. On the second evening, Monique joined them for dinner at the hotel restaurant. To Darius's surprise, she and Amara connected immediately, bonding over a shared love of puzzles and ice cream. "Your daughter is remarkable," Monique told him as Amara concentrated on the children's menu word search. "She has such curiosity about everything. She reminds me of Jasmine that way," Darius said. "Always asking questions, always wanting to understand how things work." Monique hesitated, then asked, "Would it be okay if I asked about Jasmine? You don't speak of her often at work." Darius glanced at Amara, who was still absorbed in her puzzle. Jasmine was extraordinary. A pediatric nurse with infinite patience. "We met in college and married young. Everyone said it wouldn't last, but we proved them wrong." His voice softened. "Until we couldn't anymore." "The cancer came suddenly?" Darius nodded. Stage 4 by the time they found it. 6 months from diagnosis to he couldn't finish the sentence. Amara was 4, old enough to remember her mother, but young enough that those memories will fade. That's what breaks my heart the most. Monique reached across the table and briefly touched his hand. The first time she had ever initiated physical contact. "But she has you to keep those memories alive." "I try," Darius said. "We have photo albums, videos. I tell her stories about Jasmine every night." That's why the goodnight texts are so important, Monique realized. Yes, it was Jasmine's tradition. No matter how late her shift at the hospital, she would text me to say goodnight to Amara. After she died, I continued it. Even when I'm right there in the room, we still do the text. It's our connection to her. Monique's eyes shimmered with unexpected emotion. Thank you for sharing that with me. The business meetings concluded successfully the following day, leaving Darius and Amara with 2 days to explore Charlotte together. To his surprise, Monique asked if she could join them for part of their sightseeing. "I rarely take time to actually see the cities I visit," she admitted. It might be nice to experience Charlotte through Amara's eyes. They spent a magical day at the Science Museum and Freedom Park, with Amara alternating between holding her father's hand and Monique's, as she pulled them from one exhibit to the next. Darius couldn't remember the last time he had laughed so freely or felt so present in the moment. That evening, as they shared barbecue at a famous local restaurant, Amara asked Monique, "Do you have kids?" Monique shook her head. "No, I don't." "Why not? You'd be a good mom. You explain things really well, and you're patient, like my daddy." Darius started to intervene, but Monique gave him a small smile. "It's okay." To Amara, she said, "Sometimes life takes us on different paths than we expected. I focused on building my company, and before I knew it, years had passed." "But you're not too old," Amara insisted. "My friend Kayla's mom had a baby last year, and she's older than you." Monique laughed. "Well, thank you for that assessment. You're right. It's not impossible, just complicated." Later, after Amara had fallen asleep in their hotel suite, Darius stepped into the hallway to call Monique and apologize for his daughter's personal questions. "Please don't apologize," Monique said. It was refreshing to have such honest conversation. Children have a way of cutting through the pretense adults build around themselves. "Still, she shouldn't have pried," Monique said gently. "Today was one of the most enjoyable days I've had in years. Your daughter is delightful, and seeing you with her," she paused. "It reminded me that there's more to life than quarterly reports and client acquisitions." The next day was their last in Charlotte. Monique had meetings with another client, so Darius and Amara visited the aquarium on their own. As they watched the sea turtles, Amara said suddenly, "I like Monique. She makes you smile." Darius was taken aback. "Well, she's a good boss, and she's been very kind to us on this trip." Amara gave him a look that was startlingly mature. Mama would like her too. Darius didn't know how to respond to that, so he simply hugged his daughter close. That evening, as they were packing for their early flight the next day, there was a knock at their hotel suite door. Monique stood there holding a gift bag. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said. "I wanted to drop this off for Amara before you leave." The gift was a beautiful snow globe of the Charlotte skyline with a handwritten note thanking Amara for showing her the city through new eyes. "That's so thoughtful," Darius said, genuinely touched. "Would you like to come in? Amara's just finishing her dinner." Monique hesitated, then nodded. For a few minutes. Amara was thrilled with the gift and insisted on showing Monique her drawings from the aquarium. As the child chattered happily, Darius observed the gentle way Monique interacted with her, the genuine interest she showed in Amara's stories. When it was time for Amara's bedtime routine, Monique rose to leave. But Amara asked, "Can Monique hear my goodnight story, Daddy? Please." Darius looked to Monique, who seemed surprised but pleased. "If Monique doesn't mind, I'd be honored," she said softly. So Darius read the story with Amara, snuggled on one side of him, and Monique perched somewhat awkwardly on the edge of the bed. By the end, Amara's eyes were drooping. "Time for the goodnight text," Darius said, reaching for his phone. "Can you send one to Monique too?" Amara asked sleepily. "So she knows we love her." Darius froze, embarrassed by his daughter's presumption. "Amara, that's not." "It's okay," Monique interrupted, her voice unusually emotional. "That's very sweet of you, Amara." After Amara had fallen asleep, Darius walked Monique to the door. "I'm sorry if that was uncomfortable. She gets attached to people quickly." Monique shook her head. "Don't apologize. It was nice." She hesitated, then added, "This whole trip has been unexpectedly meaningful." There was a moment of charged silence between them, filled with things neither was ready to articulate. "Safe travels tomorrow," Monique said finally. "I'll see you back in Philadelphia." The flight home the next day felt strangely empty without Monique's presence. Amara asked about her several times, wondering when they would see her again. Back at work, Darius expected things to return to their previous professional dynamic. But something had shifted. Monique began including him in more high-level, strategic discussions. They often worked late, ordering dinner to the conference room as they refined proposals or analyzed market trends. Sometimes their conversations drifted to personal topics, books they'd read, places they'd traveled, memories of their respective childhoods. One evening, as they were leaving the office together, Monique asked hesitantly, "How would you and Amara feel about having dinner this weekend?" "There's a new restaurant near Rittenhouse Square that's supposed to be family-friendly, but still has excellent food." Darius was surprised but pleased. "We'd like that very much." The dinner was the first of many shared outings over the following months. Monique became a regular presence in their lives, attending Amara's school play, joining them for Sunday afternoon walks along the Schuylkill River, even helping with a particularly challenging science project. Amara adored her, and Darius found himself increasingly drawn to this version of Monique, warm, funny, vulnerable in ways she never showed at the office. He began to recognize the subtle signs of her moods, the way she touched her locks when she was thinking deeply, how she tapped her fingers when anxious, the particular smile she reserved just for Amara. 6 months after the fateful misdirected text, Darius realized with startling clarity that he had fallen in love with Monique. The recognition terrified him. Not only was she his boss, but he hadn't opened his heart to anyone since Jasmine. The risk seemed overwhelming. Yet he couldn't deny the connection between them or the way Amara had blossomed with Monique in their lives. Even his mother, visiting from Georgia, had commented on the positive change in both of them. "She's good for you," his mother had observed after meeting Monique at Amara's birthday party. And more importantly, she's good for Amara. Still, Darius hesitated to express his feelings, afraid of disrupting the delicate balance they had achieved. Monique, too, seemed content with their undefined relationship, never pushing for more than he was ready to give. The catalyst came unexpectedly on the 3rd anniversary of Jasmine's death. Darius had taken the day off work, as he always did, to visit the cemetery with Amara, and then spend the day looking through photo albums and sharing memories. That evening, after Amara had gone to bed, the doorbell rang. Monique stood there holding a small bouquet of Jasmine's favorite flowers, information Darius had once mentioned in passing. "I don't want to intrude," she said softly. "I just wanted you to know I was thinking of you both today." Darius felt something break open inside him. "Please come in." They sat together on the couch, not speaking at first, the flowers resting between them. Finally, Darius said, "Thank you for remembering." Monique's eyes were gentle. "Of course I remembered. She's part of who you are, part of who Amara is." I've been afraid, Darius admitted, the words coming unbidden. Afraid that moving forward somehow dishonors her memory. "I don't believe that's true," Monique said carefully. "From everything you've told me about Jasmine, she would want you and Amara to be happy. She would have liked you," Darius said, echoing Amara's earlier assessment. "Your determination, your intelligence, the way you care so deeply beneath that professional exterior." Monique smiled, a hint of vulnerability in her expression. "I've never met anyone like you, Darius. You've changed how I see everything." The air between them seemed charged with possibility. Darius reached for her hand and she intertwined her fingers with his. "I don't know exactly what this is between us," he said honestly, "but I'd like to find out if you would." Monique's answer was to lean forward and kiss him gently, a kiss that held both promise and understanding. Their relationship evolved naturally after that night. They were careful to maintain professional boundaries at work, but outside the office they gradually built a life together. Monique proved to be a patient and loving presence in Amara's life, never trying to replace Jasmine, but creating her own unique bond with the child. 6 months later, as they walked through Fairmount Park on a crisp autumn day, Amara running ahead to feed the ducks, Monique turned to Darius with uncharacteristic nervousness. "I've been offered a position on the board of a major tech company in Houston," she said. "It would mean stepping back from day-to-day operations at Pinnacle." Darius felt a cold knot of anxiety. "You're leaving Philadelphia?" Monique took a deep breath. "That depends on you and Amara. I don't want to leave you, either of you." In fact, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I was hoping we might consider making this arrangement permanent." Darius stared at the box, then at Monique's face, vulnerable, hopeful, and more open than he had ever seen it. "Are you proposing to me?" he asked, astonished. Monique laughed softly. "I believe I am. Not very traditionally, I'm afraid. But what about your career? Pinnacle is your life's work." It was Monique agreed. "But I've discovered there are more important things than being CEO. The company will continue under new leadership. I was thinking you might be ready for that challenge, actually, and I can serve on the board remotely, consulting as needed." Darius was speechless, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she was offering. "I love you, Darius," Monique said simply. "And I love Amara. I want to build a life with you both, if you'll have me." Before Darius could respond, Amara came running back, immediately noticing the box in Monique's hand. "Is that a ring?" she asked excitedly. "Are you going to be my stepmom?" Monique knelt down to Amara's level. "I would be honored to be your stepmom, but only if both you and your daddy want that." Amara looked between them, her young face serious. "Daddy, remember when you sent Monique that text by mistake? Mama always said there are no accidents, just opportunities we don't recognize at first." Darius felt tears spring to his eyes at this echo of Jasmine's philosophy. He looked at Monique, this extraordinary woman who had entered their lives through a simple mistake and transformed them with her love. "Yes," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes to all of it." 1 year later, in the same hotel in Charlotte, where their journey had truly begun, Darius and Monique celebrated their wedding with a small gathering of family and friends. Amara, serving as flower girl and best daughter, beamed with pride as she watched her father and Monique exchange vows. During the reception, Monique pulled Darius aside, whispering in his ear, "I never thanked you properly," for what he asked, puzzled. Monique smiled, her eyes shining with happiness. "For that misdirected text, the one that said I love you." Darius laughed. "Probably the best mistake I ever made." "It wasn't a mistake," Monique said softly. "It just reached the right person at the wrong time." She leaned closer, her lips brushing his ear as she whispered, "And now I get to say it back every day for the rest of our lives. I love you, Darius Thompson." As they rejoined the celebration, Darius watched Amara twirling on the dance floor, her face alight with joy. He thought of Jasmine, and somehow knew she was smiling down on them, approving of this new chapter in their story. Sometimes the most profound connections begin with the smallest moments. A misdirected text, a moment of vulnerability, an unexpected kindness. In opening his heart again, Darius had not diminished Jasmine's memory, but had instead honored her greatest wish that he and Amara would find happiness and love again. And in Monique, they had found not a replacement for what was lost, but a beautiful new beginning that none of them had expected. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more emotional journeys that remind us of the unexpected ways love can find us even in our most vulnerable moments. Sometimes our greatest mistakes lead us exactly where we are meant to be.